Two-year-old boy who vanishes at a remote Idaho campsite. His parents are convinced their toddler boy has been kidnapped. The searching for Deorr Kunz continues at this hour. The family is standing by, vowing to not leave until they find their son. But who was the last person to see the little boy before he disappears? Tonight, we uncover who else was at that Timber Creek campground the day Deorr goes missing without a trace.
This is the campsite where Deorr and his family were camping. The creek is just here, a few yards away.
We decided we're going to go a little exploring.
They went up this way, away from the campsite.
He was going to be good with Grandpa by the campfire.
By the time the parents came back,
we weren't more than probably 50 yards away in 10 minutes.
Deorr was gone.
Good evening. I'm Jean Casares in for Nancy Grace. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin tonight in the bizarre case of a 2-year-old boy who mysteriously vanishes at an Idaho campground. Let's go straight out to the reporter Nate Eaton with East Idaho News. Nate, you've been right out there where the search is happening. What are you hearing about who else was at the campsite when 2-year-old Deorr disappears?
Well, we know that Deorr's parents were there, along with his great-grandfather and a friend of the great-grandfather. At this point, we don't know much about that friend. Police aren't saying much, but they are telling us that at this point, they believe the parents are clear that they did nothing wrong and that they just want their son back.
All right, I think we want to show everybody right out there. Nate, you were out there, and we want to show exactly to everybody what that area is like, where they were, where this little boy went missing, and where they're searching. Watch this.
This is the campsite where Deorr and his family were camping. It looks like your average campsite. You've got a fire pit, a picnic table, very close to the creek that we have heard so much about. In fact, the creek is just here, a few yards away. Notice the terrain down to the water. It's very steep. It would be difficult for a young child to make their way down that hill. It is possible, but again, it is a steep hill. Now, we're told that the parents and all of the family were here together when the parents decided to go off exploring. They went up this way, away from the campsite, while Deorr stayed here with his grandfather. By the time the parents came back, about 10 or 15 minutes later, Deorr was gone.
Now, it's very interesting what you're showing us, what you're telling us, and there is water there. And I've asked some questions, so I understand there is a creek that goes into the reservoir which is also called a lake. And they are continuing to search down there in the water area. What's happening right now?
They are. They're there as we speak. They've been there several times. We've been told that search and rescue crews have gone through that creek on their hands and knees, combing every inch of that creek. But they've really been focusing on the reservoir. In fact, we're hearing that some of the dogs, the search dogs, may have picked up a scent. Not sure what that scent is, but it seems that the focus today and the past few days has been that reservoir.
Nate Eaton, you are right there at the search site in Idaho. We do know that this little boy had a Hot Wheels truck in his pocket. So that's one thing he did have with him when he went missing. Any sight of that at all, which would be such a huge clue at this point.
Yeah, it would be a huge clue. No sight of that. No sight of his toy monkey, of his cup, of his blanket. Those are 3 items his parents say he always takes with him wherever he goes. Those were left behind at the campsite. No sign of any of those things. No sign of his cowboy boots, of his camouflage jacket that he was wearing, of his pajama pants. Nothing.
Doesn't make sense. Absolutely doesn't.
It looks like your average campsite. You've got a fire pit, a picnic table.
Are you by water? Yes.
Very close to the creek that we have heard so much about. In fact, the creek is just here, a few yards away. Notice the terrain down to the water. It's very steep.
Our biggest concern was the creek, which was knee deep, a few feet wide.
6 guys, 2 in wetsuits, hip waders, on their hands and knees. Searched it yesterday. We're searching today.
In a split second, your whole world is upside down and vanished.
The parents decided to go off exploring. They went up this way, away from the campsite, while Deorr stayed here with his grandfather.
I come back up to get him, and I yelled over to Grandpa, "Where's little Deorr?" Immediately shocked. He says, "I thought he came up to you." There's not a single trace of him.
I'm Jean Casares in for Nancy Grace. It's summer. You want to go camping. You go to an area that's in the state you live in, near Idaho Falls. That's where the family is from. And you have all adults. You're watching your child, and all of a sudden they're gone. Absolutely gone. Nate Eaton, you were there. You have spoken with the family. Did they take any pictures of the child before this all happened?
As far as I know, I don't think they did. They had just arrived at the campsite that Friday afternoon, and then they set up their camp, and then the parents went off exploring, and when they came back, he was gone. So as far as I know, no recent photos of him.
You know what I bet, Nate? They found some minnows down at the water, and they wanted to bring the little boy to the water to see the minnows. That's where they probably would have taken their pictures once they got down to the water's edge. Nate, what else have you learned in talking with the parents, in being there, that we don't know because we're here and you're there?
The parents are very distraught. They are camped right outside where all of this happened. The mom, the dad, and their tent and a little campfire. They're not eating. They're having a hard time sleeping. They say they'll do anything to find their little boy, including having a lie detector test, having a DNA sample. They want people to know they are innocent, and they just want their boy back. Nate
Eaton, who is the grandfather's friend? Is it a male? Is it a female? I mean, what do we know about them?
We know very little. We know it is a male. He is a man, and he was there with the grandpa and the parents. Police aren't saying much about him other than he is cooperating with their investigation. We also know the grandpa. He's a little older. He has some health issues, and they don't at this point suspect the grandpa to have anything to do with the disappearance. As far as the friend, we're still gathering information, learning as much as we can on him.